This one is not going to be an easy video. We lost our pet, our dog, just the other day. His name was Woody. He was a greyhound. He was 9 years old. And I hoped that maybe sharing what I've been through and what the family's been through in the last few days might help with the grieving and may possibly help someone else, that they know that they're not going through the process on their own, because it is basically the worst thing ever. Any loss is the worst. He was our mate, he was a companion, and I am going to share the story of what happened. And if you are going through some sort of grief or loss yourself at the moment, doesn't matter if it's not a pet, it could be grieving over a loved one, then please just make sure you care for yourself. And if talking about this sort of subject is a bit much right now, then it's probably not the best video for you to watch. So it was Thursday of last week. Today is Tuesday. And it was just a normal day. I was working from home, and this is going to be really hard. I was working at my desk, and I heard a big bang, and then our other dog, Umpy, was going off, probably like most of you guys with your own pets, especially dogs, as if there was someone or something in the yard that shouldn't have been there. And when I looked out the office window, Woody was there, having a seizure on the ground. And so I grabbed my phone and ran to go out there. Umpy was very distressed. So the first thing that I did was get him to go into the other part of the shed, where there's a doggy gate, so that I could just keep him separated. And we in Australia are right in the heat of summer, so it wasn't one of the hottest days. Today it was 40 here today, 40 degrees Celsius. It wasn't that hot. It was still a hot day, but it wasn't that extreme. But I still was really worried that it was something to do with the heat at first, because he was out, he was laying out semi in the sun. But now, going back and thinking about it, I think he, something was wrong, and he'd gone out to go to the toilet or something, and he fell. So my first thought was to make sure he was cool enough. So I grabbed the hose and, gently tried to cool him down. The whole time he was still having a seizure. It was the most fucking horrible thing. I don't know how people are nurses. Oh my gosh, hats off to you guys, and doctors and all medical personnel. It's not me. So I just thought I was just talking to him, trying to keep myself calm, trying to keep him calm. Well, not calm. He was seizing. So, I was just still trying to talk to him, slowly wetting him down. There was some of their towels, the dog's towels, hanging on the line there. So I grabbed one of those and wet that and popped that on him. And at the same time as doing all of that, I was trying to call my husband, which I did eventually get hold of him. I think I got hold of my daughter first and was saying, please call him. The worst part about that was that, because Steve is the main carer for the dogs, even though they're all of ours, you know, he is the main person who looks after them, and they're really his dogs. And he was away for work that week, and he wasn't due to come home until the Friday afternoon. So I was talking to him and just explaining what I was doing. It was all chaotic. Like, I just remember feeling just chaos, and my heart was like going so fast. And it was, like I said, it was still hot, so it was outside in the sun as well. And he eventually came out of his seizure, and I just kept talking to him, trying to keep him really calm and tell him that everything was okay. And when he started to, well, I actually tried to lift him myself so that I could take him into the garage, into the shed, so that he was completely out of the sun, and, you know, could do that with him. But he must have been coming out of it enough that he was trying to sort of stand as well. I think maybe me trying to pick him up was annoying him or something, so he semi hopped up. So I assisted him, and we got him in there, and he laid down on the concrete. And, you know, Steve was still on the phone on and off as I could, and he said, you know, I think you need to get him to the vet. And by that time as well, I can't even remember why I left him for a minute. Maybe that was when Steve had said, you know, I think you need to get him to the vet, and we can't lift Steve's boot up properly where it is in the garage because of the fridge that's there. So I knew I had to move the car out a little bit so I could put the boot up so that I could put him in there and get him straight to the vet. So I think that's what I was doing, running out to get that. And then by the time I come back, he was having another seizure. It's just fucking horrible. And for those of you who know what happens when, or what can happen when animals, doesn't matter, having a seizure, you know, everything becomes loose, you know. So he was going to the bathroom both ways, and it was just horrific. So then I was trying to lift him up myself and get him to the car, and I couldn't lift him. And I really thought that, you know, the adrenaline would help me lift him, because that's what you always hear. But I couldn't, no matter what I tried to do, I couldn't lift him. And I was home by myself. So I ran next door to the neighbours, and thank God he answered, and thank God he came straight over with me, and he helped me lift him into the back of the car. And by that time, he had stopped seizing again. And, you know, I didn't really make any small talk or anything. Obviously, I just moved the car out, clicked the garage door, and took off. Because meanwhile, Steve had contacted the vets, and we've got two vets that are close by, and one didn't have a vet actually there, so he directed me to the other one, and I was heading straight there, and it's maybe a 5-minute drive. And it was fucking horrible. It's horrible. He was seizing in the back of the car while I was driving, and there was nothing I could do about it other than to get him to the vets. So then Steve was on the phone, and it was great because he was able to call them and tell them, like, you know, I'm 2 minutes away. And I pulled up, and they were amazing. Sorry. The two vet nurses came straight up to the car, and sorry, I've got the biggest lump in my throat. I just want to absolutely bawl. I'm trying to just keep going because I really need to get this out. The vet nurses were amazing. They came straight out to the car. My adrenaline, I can't believe my adrenaline was just going crazy. My heart was going crazy. They brought what they needed straight out to the car. They gave him injections to stop him seizing and to relax him. And they carried him straight inside. So I was just like, they were like my godsend. They were like angels because I didn't know what else to do. And they just came along and, were amazing. And so then, I came inside and they were kind enough. They had like one of the, rooms that they, go over your pets and stuff. And one of those was available. So they let me go in there. Because obviously I was in a state. And I think I had sort of held my emotion together to that point. My heart was going ridiculous and my adrenaline was ridiculous, but I wasn't, falling apart crying or anything. But I think the minute that I got into that vet's and they took over and they could do their very best for Woody, my emotion then hit because I could. And so, the lovely lady at the desk, came in. I asked for a drink because I didn't feel like it was a long time from when, it all started. But I think because I was out in that sun, I couldn't, I needed water, I needed something. So they were lovely. So basically, after that, the vet came in and said, we've got two nurses with Woody the whole time now. He's been given what he needed to be given to stop seizing and to make sure he's not in pain and he's relaxed, which was great news. Then it's all a little bit of a blur, so sorry if I'm taking my time with this part. The comings and going of in the vets is just, it's difficult. But basically I just had to wait. They were doing what they needed to do, and during that time I had updated Steve that, he was there, he was being taken care of. My daughter, when I couldn't get Steve in the very first, moment, Lauren, I had spoken with her. So I think I remember speaking to her just to let her know that we were at the vets. And I rang my son. My daughter is away, my husband's away, was away, and James was the only person that was still, in the vicinity of Newcastle, basically. So I rang him and just said, I need you now. And he just dropped everything and left work, like didn't even question anything. He just said, I'll leave now. And my main thing was, I just said, take your time, drive carefully, as we do as parents. That was my main concern, that he didn't rush. And he headed straight towards me, and he was about maybe 40 minutes away. from where we are. So then the vet came in and asked about the next steps, and basically it was really getting some blood work and trying to work out what was wrong, or at least trying to eliminate what it wasn't. And we said, yep, go ahead, do that. So he went ahead and was doing that. And then he came back in, and it was probably, 10 minutes later or something. And he just looked at me and he just said, I'm so sorry. It's not good. He just, no matter what, with the medication, he just kept seizing, and his legs were going stiff, and the blood work had come back, and there were a few things that were a little bit off, but he said that they're not causational, like they're not the cause of it. They could actually be because of the seizing that they were showing. And he thinks that he had a aneurysm, and that there was nothing that they could do. So by this time, Steve's decided, to come back. It was 3 hours away where he was working. So he was en route back, and the vet said that he couldn't wait for him. It was that bad that they were giving him the anesthesia medication about every 10 minutes. And, it just wasn't good. So I just obviously said, I understand there's nothing that you can do. And so I just said, my son's on his way. And by that point, I think he was 10 minutes away. And I said, can we at least wait until he gets here? And he said, of course, that's fine. So we waited for him to arrive. We had to call my husband, tell him, which was horrific, because he wasn't going to get to say goodbye, which was just fucked up. Because they're mates, they're best friends, they're companions. And he wasn't going to get to say goodbye. And he was driving, and he had a long drive ahead of him. So after the vet and I spoke to him that time, really didn't speak to Steve again until he got home, because it was just too hard. He was too upset, and he was trying to drive and concentrate, and it was just making him too emotional while he was driving. So from that point on, I just left him alone. Said the same, drive carefully, look after yourself. So then James arrived, and it was just, again, another gift. The fact that he was able to get there as quick as possible and be there with me, and we got to spend, a few minutes with Woody and say our goodbyes, for Steve, and tell him lots of good things, and he was put to sleep out of his pain. And horrible. Just horrible. So wow, if anyone's still listening or watching, it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I guess I'm not really even filming this for people to watch. I probably feel like it really is, and feels like a good way to work through my grief. And Steve has a lot more sadness and grieving to do because he's lost his best friend, companion, pet companion. But for myself, I just was finding it very difficult after that day to not picture what happened that day, rather than remembering Woody, all the fun stuff that we've had together with him. And I'm really hoping that talking it through and having, letting my emotion out and will really help, because it's really shitty. And I know that there are so many people out there that have been through exactly what I've been through, the same type of thing, and it's just horrendous. We love our pets so much. They're such part of our lives, part of our families, and it's just bloody difficult. Bloody difficult. Afterwards, James and I, when we finally left the vets, sorry, I'm sitting so uncomfortably. When we left, we headed home, and that was a horrendous drive home, even though it was only 5 minutes. Just being back in the car and just horrible. We got home, and poor Umpy, our other dog, who's also a greyhound, he was, so excited to see us, but you could see that he was like, okay, where's Woody? So James sat and spent time with him, which was awesome. And I cleaned up because I did not want Steve coming home to having to clean up, from what had happened. It was bad enough that he didn't get to say his goodbyes. So, yeah, I cleaned up, and James spent heaps and heaps of time with Umpy, and I said, I'm going to have a shower because, it was God knows what I had on me from earlier in the day, when things happened, and it's just, needed a shower. So we did that, and, Steve eventually got home, and we sat, and the boys had a beer, and I had a glass of wine, and, we talked about Woody, probably more a little bit later in the evening. And Woody was, he'd been retired for quite so many years, but he was a racing greyhound, and Stephen and Woody did that together. Obviously, Steve didn't race, but Steve was the trainer of him, and they were best mates. They had so much fun together and travelled, and Woody won races, he placed, but he absolutely loved racing so much. Steve really retired him to make sure that, as he got a little bit older, that he didn't injure himself and something didn't happen to him, so that he could retire and enjoy his retirement. And that's what Woody was doing. And that's how I'll try and remember him. Remember him racing, remember him, the silly stuff that he would do in the backyard. He used to always, when he did naughty things, he was good at hiding it and making it look like Umpy did it. He was the one who dug the holes. He was the one who got up to the mischief, I think, more than Umpy, but he had a way of hiding it or doing it and not getting busted. And because I work right at the window that looks out in the yard where they are, I would bust him. bust him digging, bust him, doing stuff. And yeah, that's how I want to remember him. And yeah. I will try and see if I'm able to add some videos of Woody, or at least some pictures of Woody here when I finish. And I just really want to take the time to say thank you. If so any of you really are watching all this way through, it's an emotional roller coaster, and I appreciate you being there and listening. And I'm hoping that I can really work through my grief now, and talking about it definitely helps. It takes the lid off a little bit, and having a cry definitely helps. So I really thank you so much. And if you're going through grief yourself, don't be too hard on yourself. Feel what you need to feel. Don't let other people tell you that it's time to move on, or feel not okay that you're still feeling grief. People can be very dismissive, and everyone grieves differently and at different times, and there's no right or wrong. It's just different for everyone. So don't listen to people who don't allow you to be on your own path with that, because it is different for all of us. And I'll send you a hug through the TV or your phone, whatever you're watching on. And I hope you take care of yourself and do something nice for yourself, and go and give your pets a hug. I'm going to go and give ours a hug. And thanks again for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Hopefully on a more happy note. Sending lots of love.